Dream recording, 2nd of September 2021. Wow, I just had a really awesome, powerful dream. And as I lay here, I feel surprisingly cold. I'm not entirely sure whether the flat is cold, but my whole body is absolutely frozen. In the dream, I was at a house that felt like it was the family home I grew up in. However, it was somewhere different. I found myself upstairs in a bedroom where an old analogue television sat in the corner of a room. There seemed to be a lot of static on the screen, which is a typical sign that there was no transmission. I didn't focus on it much other than it hummed away in the background while I was in the middle of doing something else. Then, without warning, I felt my perception of reality begin to shift. A sudden euphoria started rushing over me, and in that moment my face felt like it was doing something strange. Distorting, stretching, moving almost of its own accord. My mouth especially had this wild, uncontrollable sensation to it, as though it no longer quite belonged to me. I made a decision in that instant. I needed to submerge myself in a bath. That was the thought I had in my head, clear as anything, get to the bathroom. The only problem was getting there without being seen, particularly by family, because it felt very much like I was in my mum and dad's home. And I felt spacey, hazy, and completely unable to think straight. The kind of state where you might just stop mid-step and stare at something, looking at the dust particles floating through the air. My head and body were rushing, almost as though I'd taken something without knowing it. The moment I stepped into the bathroom, I shut the door and started running the bath. After a minute or so, I dipped one of my hands in. There was only a couple of inches of water and it was stone cold, as if it had been sitting there for days. I left the tap running, but everything coming out of it was equally cold. There was no warmth to it whatsoever, and I had no idea how long it was going to take to heat up. That's when another thought crept in. Maybe I should just go for a walk instead. I could walk for miles through the countryside, through the country park near where my parents live. I could walk all night if I wanted to. It felt like it would be so much easier just being outside in nature, away from people, moving through the open air until whatever I was experiencing wore off. I genuinely felt I couldn't stay in the house while in that condition. I told myself if I see my mum and dad, I'll just say I'm popping out for a walk and that'll be fine. But honestly, it wasn't fine. Then I noticed a mirror attached to the wall above the sink, and a wave of curiosity came over me. I needed to see what kind of state I was in, especially if I was going to face anyone. So I stepped towards the sink, leaned forwards, and stared into the mirror.
It's party time! Party? Because I gotta!
Jim Carrey, of all the people, was staring back at me. I looked away, then immediately snapped my gaze back, and there he was again. What on earth? It was me, but I'm suddenly Jim Carrey. I focused on my mouth, gave a slow smile, and thought, look at those teeth, I'm Jim Carrey. I stretched my mouth, widened my eyes, pulled every expression I could, the way Jim has done so iconically throughout his entire career. It was absolutely incredible, looking at myself as someone else entirely and feeling the very real sense that with a different face came the potential for a completely different personality. And then suddenly I woke up. I was laying in bed, legs tucked under a duvet, upper body in just a t-shirt, and I was absolutely freezing. Upon reflection, even 20 minutes or so after waking, I still felt frozen through, and what struck me as strange was that the windows weren't frosted at all. They normally would be if it were cold inside or out, and when I opened one, the air outside wasn't cold at all. The building I lived in had been converted into flats from an old Elizabethan workhouse, and although the windows just had single glazing, I checked the temperature inside the flat and it read 14 degrees. One more thing worth noting, as I was coming out of sleep, still in that half-lucid state, I had a fleeting vision of a skull mask surrounded by darkness. Around this period, I'd been buying plain masks, kind of paper mache but plastic, from Hobbycraft, and decorating them, trying to unlock a bit of creativity. However, something caused me to later on break them up, despite them being made of toughened plastic. In that drowsy half-awake moment, the image also made me think about a lighter which I brought back from Chichen Itza in Mexico 2015, which had a skull design on it. In the next video, I'll be exploring what several ancient and modern traditions make of this dream experience.